All right, welcome back. It is now 7:15. I call this meeting of the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole to order for Thursday, July 6, 2017. And when you're ready, please take the roll.
Hendrickson.
Here.
Kenny.
Aye. Mope here.
Mott.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Rule.
Here.
Tome.
Here.
Traxler.
Here.
All present.
Okay, this meeting's been noticed and appropriately according to state statutes. At this point, we're looking to take a motion to approve the agenda unless there's alterations, deletions, or need for discussion.
Make a motion to approve the agenda?
Take a second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. We do have one person signed up for public comment, Alan Osgood. So if you'd step to the mic, Mr. Osgood, give your name and address, and then share with us your thoughts.
Hi, I'm Alan Osgood. My address is 440 Meadow Lane. I have a statement here. Greetings, my name is Al Osgood, and tonight I'm here on behalf of the Columbus Courtside Organization to address items mentioned in the City Schools Facility Use Agreement agenda item. For those that are probably not aware, this past season was the first season the CCO and the City of Columbus had an agreement in place and worked together to put on the boys basketball program. The CCO's main function up until the past few years was mostly monetary and equipment support, along with providing camps and clinics. Technically, the City Recreation Department has had full control of the program up until this past season. We would agree there were some parents that had concerns on how last season went, but there were also several parents who were initially reluctant and ended up being pleased with the season and how the season went along. Also, they were pleased with the new philosophies the CCO worked on with the City Rec Board in creating last season's program. It is the CCO's intent to provide a balanced boys basketball program for Columbus youth, one that offers every boy the opportunity to experience and learn the game of basketball, improve their skills as they grow, and hopefully provide them the skills to succeed in high school and beyond, both on and off the court. If our goal was to have a competitive basketball program, as it's called on the agenda, we wouldn't take the time and the resources to offer a community program. Last year, the CCO offered a program where kids were evaluated based on skill. Kids were able to further develop their basketball technique and play against kids with similar skill. The goal is to get kids more even playing time, avoid blowout games, and boost confidence so the kids want to stick with basketball. The CCO is disappointed that the city looks at this as an opportunity to run a competing program and not as an opportunity to let an organization that is solely dedicated to boys basketball provide an all-around youth boys program. I thank you for the time. The CCO felt it important to our voice to be heard as it relates to this situation.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is consider the application for a Class A liquor license in the City of Columbus for the Painted Crate located at 315 East James Street. Cindy Klein is the agent. Patrick?
Yes, as with some of the other licenses we just approved in recent meetings, this applicant has come forward. The police chief, fire chief, building inspector all received notice. There was nothing provided by Chief Meister. Everything, he had no comment, which was a positive thing. Chief Kane and the building inspector also inspected the premises and reported that they have no issues with the premises on this application.
Rod?
What kind of business is the Painted Crate? I'm confused here on what they do.
It's sort of a little whimsical shop with cute craftsy items.
That's what I thought.
But I think they
so
sell like
I guess-
refurb stuff or like redone furniture and other similar
Yeah.
things.
But I guess my question for the Class A, so that means that they would sell basically whole bottles, like a retail store? Yeah.
for consumption offset.
Okay, thank you.
Ah,
A away, B bar.
Anyone else? Matt?
So we had fire and building, and then Chief Marshall said he had no issues. Are there any outstanding issues with CWL or permits with the city, outstanding liens, loans, et cetera, et cetera? As far as we know, we're all clear.
Right, and you remember that the big one for this is the first time they're issued,
Mhm.
holding, and that all the licenses that come in to the clerk go through the same review.
Mhm.
And if they come here to you with no attached memo saying that there are issues, then there aren't any.
Okay.
Andy?
For Class A, there's no limit on the amount of license
No
we give
limit.
out, right? Thanks.
With a Class A, they do have the ability to periodically have samples that they can give, but it follows the state law of how many ounces to how many per person, for how many times they can do it. It's very regulated.
All right. So, need to do a roll call on this one then, or do we
This
just?
would just be
voice vote?
referred to the next
Refer it?
meeting. This is the meeting, the publicly noticed meeting, so that if anybody had issue from the vendor point of view, they could send letters like we got for the last time saying, please don't until they take care of these outstanding invoices, and we did not receive it.
Any objection to referring this to the next regular meeting?
I only have one
Mike?
question. Is the Class A, does that include wine or is that just liquor and
Class
beer?
A liquor is wine and liquor. Wine always goes with liquor. Fermented malt, beer, also wine coolers.
Okay, thank you.
Beer-based.
I don't see any objections. I guess we will refer this to the next regular meeting. Thank you. All right, item 6, consider a task order with Rupert Milkie to design an extension to Hall Road. City Engineer Jason Leith is here for any questions. Thank you.
I just want to start off by saying I apologize for this one as well. I know the exhibits on these two task orders got left off on the last submittal for the packet, so I know this committee of the whole. I do have that with me tonight, but I will make sure that it gets sent out and distributed to you guys for the next meeting for review of the detailed information. I did want to just start out by saying that this task order is a little different in terms of design. Although we're designing a roadway, it differs from our typical reconstructs that we historically do for the streets program. And in terms of a couple things, so I guess I just wanted to kind of point out the differences or highlights if you read through here. Part of this design, because it will be the T grant applicable, will contain some additional work, such as the design study report that's required by the T grant application. So that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of bring up and just make you aware of. It's not that we don't do that, but we generally don't prepare a full-blown report with roadway designs when they're local roads as much as we would do for these type of applications. Along with that is a pavement design that is required. Normally we would just do a design that would meet the standards of what the city road cross sections would typically be. Stormwater is also required on a new street construction by state law. Typically on a reconstruct, there's already a road there. We're not dealing with the suspended solids removal. On this point, we will need some stormwater treatment, so we do have a stormwater management component in here. Again, there's obviously some time and effort that's attributed towards that. And one of the next things is there is a Trans 75, which is the Department of Transportation requirement for what they call a complete streets design. It's a bike ped capable or friendly design. So we obviously have to look at designing bike lanes and or sidewalks or pedestrian access as part of, and that is a requirement of the T grant application as well. So, you know, it's because the money is coming through the federally funded program and through the state, all of these things are kind of mandated for the design. We do know we have some wetlands out there, so that'll be part of this. We'll obviously have to permit for some crossings. Because it's a new road, we'll be doing a streetlight design. Again, with an existing road, all of this infrastructure already exists. We do have a bunch of easement creations out here that we'll need for our stormwater management piece. We're anticipating we're going to work closely with Drexel to come up with a solution with stormwater. But we're still going to have to create some easements for conveyance and areas for treatment with the Drexel property. And then the last thing that I want to point out that's actually in here, included in this task order, is because of the discussions we've had with the future site to the south, they're looking at extending rail spur into there, so we are going to have to accommodate that rail spur design into the roadway. We don't exactly know what that is, but from a grade standpoint and from a crossing standpoint, we'll have to make sure that we accommodate that rail crossing into the roadway. So we have that factored in here as well. So there's going to be obviously some coordination, some design associated with that too. So those are kind of just highlights I wanted to throw out there that are kind of unique to this project, that if you look at it and you go, well, you know, this doesn't look like the normal scope that comes through on a street reconstruction. It's because of those reasons. So hopefully I answered some questions, but if you have any others, let me know.
I have a question, I guess. I'm assuming then, as you mentioned, like the TEDs and other things, that there are requirements, since this is T grant reimbursable, that this is going to be like a city section of road where you're going to have curb and gutter, you're going to have sidewalks. So there's no question about that, I guess. Because when you first brought this up, I didn't know if it was going to be more of a rural section because it's an industrial area, but those are all requirements to get the T grant reimbursement, correct?
The PED accommodations are, we can certainly accommodate PEDs and bikes without a curb and gutter situation, so we could look at that option if we still so choose to do that. Again, because of the application and the location, the question would lend itself to, do we need it? But obviously your ordinance typically points it out on new street construction. So I've planned for it, but if there is some different direction the council would like to go, we can certainly accommodate that into the design as well.
I'm just kind of curious price-wise, because it is, you know, an industrial section of town where we wouldn't really have any sidewalks abutting those sidewalks if we put them in out there. So I just thought I'd ask the question now, whether or not it could be a question we could deal with later after you start the designing. You know.
It certainly would be something that we could definitely take a look at what the cost differential is, and, you know, bring that forward early on in the preliminary design, and, you know, get some direction at that point. We can kind of lay out the cross sections and look at the differential. So.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess let's jump in. Actually, but Jason, I don't have anything for you. Thank you for the breakdown. This is more towards kind of in general. Looking through this, getting to page 3, section D, the way this was listed out was a task order for design. The construction aspect of the road in 2018 is also in here. Would we want to have this broken out into a separate task order for clarification's sake? And because otherwise we're kind of going along with a design task order with a lot of pages about design notes and then a quick little bit about construction in the future on 18. I'd like to see it broken out into 2 task orders. I think most of the ones we see usually are broken out for design and construction. And then jumping over and looking at Arnim's kind of rough idea of cost for this. For design and construction costs, you're looking at about $108,000. If I'm doing my math right, $700,000 as expected in our MOU and our potential, that whole thing, had $75,000 of anticipated design cost. We're looking at 50 now, but then we're adding in 50,000. So we're looking at kind of a final cost of $733,000 now for Hall Road. I guess the next question is we're kind of creeping up. This $33,000 and some change, how is this gonna get factored into, are we splitting it, where is it going into, I guess, the TIF numbers? So, $700,000, now we're getting a little bit higher, and just kind of make sure we're aware that we're kind of creeping, and then what are we gonna do with the money now that we're creeping, assuming that the cost estimates could obviously come up or come down. For the roads last year, they were a little high in the estimate, and we came in low and saved some money, but, I think we should make sure we're ready for it on this end. That's kind of my little spiel.
Anybody else have thoughts or comments on splitting the task order into, what'd you say, into construction and design?
Design
Is that
task
your
order
preference?
for this one, and then breaking out construction for kind of a full breakdown of what everything is.
Have we ever done this before? Separated them out?
The task orders, I believe, for other projects in town right now are broken out per design and per construction inspection. So I was kind of surprised to see these combined.
Actually, I think we do combine them typically.
Really?
Yeah, they're usually all inclusive.
I thought the ones that I received.
Called out and listed this much for design, this much for inspection, this
We
much.
didn't do that though with James Street.
James Street's a different kettle of
Yeah, but
fish.
we've been working on James for a long time, so
Yeah.
we've had multiple task
Multiple.
orders throughout
Okay, so
the,
maybe I'm looking
Going
at,
back 6 years.
okay.
yeah.
And if we're comfortable doing that, that's,
I will note that when we do include the construction services, when I project forward, we actually project in, a rate increase for 2018 in the event that, we have a salary or a rate adjustment for Rupert Milkie per our master agreement. So we do account for that, so there's not like, if it spans 2 years, we build that into the task order to make sure that there's not surprise costs coming or
so we're
that-
looking at future dollars, not current dollars. for
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Okay.
So it's comprehensive, and that's
Okay.
what I'm trying to do, so we don't come up with a shortfall or something later on because of the rate changed or something on the billing. And I will add that, when we did the breakdown, and that, I apologize, that's what I left out here. When I did the breakdown, we did make some assumptions on the construction side about how many hours, an inspector would be on site, and it's a little hard to kind of forecast out a year from now how many hours the contractor will be working. And so we just made some assumptions on that. Again, that could be less. We were kind of conservative because in the past, with especially the 2016 project, we came in under. So again, I would rather come in with a task order where, we don't come back because of an increase in cost, but we don't spend all the money. We're seeing that with James Street right now. Obviously, we're not tracking with some of our costs on James Street as high as we thought we would either. So again, if we want to see the detail, we can talk about that next time too when I get that information out to you, but then you can see the actual hours that make up these totals.
I guess going off what you're saying, I understand, Jason, you built in future dollars into the construction aspect for the costs on this. I guess on my end, it kind of reinforces the point that if we break out that task order and deal with it in 2018, we'll actually have a hard number as opposed to a theoretical number, which will give us a better idea of what we're going to pay for the TIF. I think there's no reason not to, and we get a better number when we kind of roll into the actual developer's agreement and TIF breakdown for what we're paying as opposed to hypothetical. I mean, I know obviously as we're talking, cents as compared to dollars, but every little bit counts.
Just for the council, I'm perfectly fine with that approach if that's how you guys would like to proceed. It might make more sense to have those construction dollars a little closer, like you say, but I guess this gives you a good idea in the borrowing time frame what those total costs might be as kind of a target too. So knowing that up front when you're looking at the total borrowing, then at least you kind of have a placeholder for that too. So either way, whatever the council's pleasure is.
Andy, did you have a question or comment?
Matt took care of it.
Okay. I have no idea. I think it might be your watch there, buddy.
$6 million man.
I have one question about reimbursable costs for this. Is that 50% of this reimbursable then through the T grant again? Or no?
Yes, correct.
It is, okay.
So the T grant will cover the 50% of all the engineering costs.
Okay. How about the construction part of it?
Yes.
Okay, all To Matt's comment, you know, if you have flexibility, I wouldn't mind seeing them separated either. I think then it's two items and it's not one. I just think it's a little cleaner. I mean, the agenda item actually reads, task order for design. It doesn't say construction. So I think that could just offer some more clarity. And if you're okay with doing that.
I think initially when we talked about the timing on this, the thought would be maybe that we would actually try and get to some construction this year. I really think based off of the level of effort that we have into this and the permitting, we probably won't. Especially if we get into the late year, we don't want to be building a road when it's wet and it's cold. We're going to spend more money. And so kind of as a second thought to this timing, because there isn't, other than the MOU kind of understanding of the timeline, which we know we can meet by starting next spring, the thought would be that there's, you know, again, there's no reason to include the construction now. If you guys would like to wait, we'll pull it out because we won't be looking at that until we would be, you know, getting into probably the March, April timeframe of next year. What I would suggest, though, is just keeping in the bidding phase because we'll be going through that obviously this fall/winter. So we take it up through the bidding services, and then the construction side, we could come back in with a task order, say in February or March or something, and, you know, present that to you at that time.
Just quickly, so just to get a little bit more to Matt's point, when you would come to us with these task orders, I for one would want to see the whole number now as well. I mean, whether they're broken out into two or one doesn't matter, but I think the future projection aspect of it is there either way. And the numbers firm up the closer you get. That's just the nature of construction. So I mean, I'm ambivalent if you want to give us two, you know, I just don't want to see we're getting one for design and we're thinking that's the all-in number, and then we get closer to construction phase and we get another task order we weren't expecting. So I just want to clarify that that's the risk.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree, but I guess part of that, though, is that if we're doing a task order for design, we're obviously going to be constructing it, and that asking for a number, a projection of a future dollar number is definitely well within their right as part of maybe design estimate in general. I think kind of echoing what Mike was saying, kind of my bigger point is that it's two very separate operations. And I, you know, it was kind of basically written as a design task order, and then there's this little section at the end that kind of encompasses all things construction, and that's it's actually more for construction than it is for the design phase, and it's kind of just tucked in there, I guess. That's kind of what I was driving to, but definitely not forgetting the other half of the dollar point.
And personally, I'm in favor of go ahead and splitting it into the two task orders. One point I think Mike made, which is, you know, if we're going to follow our agenda, we're specifically looking at the design phase of this. And Mr. Letha doesn't have an issue with it. So we're, is the rest of council comfortable with splitting this into two task orders? And at this point, are we just bringing the design forward to the next meeting, or does that all need to come back?
About this, I had a question. I haven't been through the T grant process. I know several people in the room have. I'm assuming the task orders don't factor into the application at all?
Actually, we do include the cost for the reimbursement in the application, correct?
That was a concern, that if the construction piece is later in February, does that affect, you know, our application?
Well, I think we could build in the projected cost, the full 108,
Yeah.
into the T-grant application, but not approve the second half until spring. I don't know that they needed a signed, I don't think,
No.
I know we don't send in the signed agreements, you know, for the engineering
It's probably just
services.
a line item of.
It's just a
rough
line
estimate,
item
yeah.
of
Sure.
cost, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think breaking them out is perfectly fine with me.
Okay.
Then I guess for agenda purposes, would we bring this back to the at least the design piece? You want to see that?
I would be comfortable bringing the design piece forward. I don't know how the other 6 members up here feel.
I think that
Yes.
would be fine.
I mean, Jason, do you have time to amend the task order agreement between now and the next regular meeting?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I think
Yeah,
that's
I have
only
the,
thing.
I have the detailed breakdowns, and they're on separate pages, so I can just omit the second page of the construction and insert the first page and strip out the construction side of the task order. But yeah, no problem on that, absolutely, we'll get that revised.
All right. Seems like we have consensus. We'll bring it forward, just the design phase.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night.
Where are we at? Item 7, the MEUW Safety Program Agreement with City of Columbus. This is a renewal.
Yeah, I included a memo in the packet and a proposed agreement. This is just, it's an updating of our agreement, longstanding agreement with municipal electric utilities for their safety program. We've had a good relationship with MEUW. We have a good safety coordinator, safety manager that comes to the city and assists us with our safety program. Just felt that the old agreement was a number of years old, and it was time to just talk to them about evolving needs from both sides. They've had some different leadership, and so we felt it was a good idea to just update the agreement, run it through, make sure that everything was covered, and that is why it's before you tonight.
This is more of an administrative dotting the i's, crossing the t's kind of thing. There's
More-
nothing
more or
really
less.
substantive.
Yeah, Attorney Johnson had a chance to look at it too, and
Okay.
everything was good on his end, at least speaking for him. But
And this will be retroactive back to the first of the year when this agreement was originally looking to be accepted, right?
yeah,
And that's not an issue at all, so. Thoughts, concerns, comments? With that silence, I would assume we're moving this forward.
I'll make a motion to move it forward for approval the next regular meeting.
Okay. Do we have a second? Do we need to vote on this?
You don't
I
have
didn't
to
think
vote,
so.
just trying to prod people along.
All right, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is consider an amendment to the policy for accepting donations to various city departments. This is second round back for us on this one, I think. Give or
Sure.
take.
Yeah, we've had this before. I think because of the long agenda last time we tabled. If you recall, it's a request by mainly department heads who receive donations for singular events or singular focus, that they can have multiple donations for those same ends to be included in the council approval per the donation policy, instead of having each individual donation coming forward separately. That was the basis of the item. And I think that we were looking towards perhaps an amendment to the policy to memorialize that, but we didn't get to that point yet.
If memory serves me right, I thought we had talked about basically getting an approved list of organizations that we normally get them from when we first started this discussion. I thought there was
You can maybe
consensus
right.
there to basically just add that list of approved organizations to the policy.
There was approved list of events that they usually use the money for.
This would be about accepting the donation, not expending it, from my understanding, but
So you're thinking a list of donors?
I
that
thought that
what
what we have in our packet is about reoccurring donations, I guess, for
Mhm.
specific, events that we do annually, and that we don't have to go through all the action of the council if it exceeds that. Was it $1,000 or less? There's nothing required, but if it exceeds the $1,000, we need to take formal action. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I thought we had consensus that we were just basically going to have a list of approved events or donations we receive those for annually, and then maybe just put them on the consent agenda or something, so we recognize it. So that's kind of what
I
I
recall that as well.
what I
Mike.
was waiting for, is just to get that list to us to approve that and add to the policy.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? I thought that's where we were anyway.
Yeah,
That's
that
right.
makes sense to me. This, I guess it's for the sake of expediency.
Yeah.
Don't see any other real reason. So bring this back with the list of events and programs that we would just have.
And that just, the light bulb just went off. As we talked about new events and programs, that's where I think the thought was we could bring to the consent agenda as a add-on to later. So if I'm feeling the consensus right now, it's we bring the list to regular meeting next time. You kind of get a sense of what it would look like, and then in the future consent agenda for similar additions to what would be the events that fall under that amendment.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. This one kind of throws me for a loop anyway. I think we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't necessarily exist, so this one's kind of crosses me up from the get, so.
Because I thought looking at the original documents we had, there wasn't some of the, like obviously for Chief Meister, there's the National Night Out, the traffic safety, presentations, coffee with a cop.
Mm-hmm.
We had all the events that are typical that they usually receive annual donations from. And we basically were giving a blanket okay that as long as it didn't exceed $1,000, that they could continue receiving donations for those events. But if there was additional ones that were being added on for new programs or new people at giving those programs, that would come to the consent agenda, which we would then.
I believe he was asking to get blanket approval to accept anything up to $2,000 for those events. Correct? He's looking to exceed the threshold of 1,000 without coming to us for each one, but with a cap at 2,000.
If they're used for those typical causes that they raise money for.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem
Yeah,
clear?
yeah.
I mean,
Right now, the policy says that if it's under $1,000, there's no action required of us. I guess what I'm looking to see is there a history of us getting an annual donation to the same event and put it on the list, and there's no more approval needed if it's a $1,200 donation.
right, that's recurring.
Exactly. So I think that's what we're looking
Okay.
for. And then, as Patrick said, use the consent agenda for any new program that would come in that we don't have on that list.
I think we're getting to like some Rube Goldberg policy creation here that I'm not in favor of, and I'm in favor of sticking with the policy as is. That's my 2 cents. Keep it clean, keep it simple.
I agree with Reagan on this one. I don't see a need for change, but.
So Reagan, if I understand it, you're thinking that this as written right now is exceeding a need, and to stick with the current policy of just anything less than $1,000 is on their own volition.
They can do it, yep, and if it's above $1,000, come here, we'll take the official acceptance of the donation. I also think that might work in the donor's favor. It's always good to get your name read into the record when you're being so generous, so.
That's a good point.
That's how I would like to see it done, but I'm but one voter.
I guess my question is, I'm assuming he's asking for up to $2,000 from everyone who wants to donate for everything he had listed. Is that what he's asking?
Right, that there'd be an approved prior understanding of the events or efforts that they're undertaking. And the Amy Jo and Kim Lang have included their items that they think would fall under this as well.
To clarify, I think this might help you, Trina. If they're looking at 4 donors of $500 apiece to equal $2,000, they don't have to come to us. That's 4 individual donors that are under the $1,000 threshold. He's looking to get acceptance on blanket approval for any singular donation to exceed $1,000, but not to exceed $2,000 for us to just go ahead and do. And like I said, I think we're just starting to get into policy gymnastics, and no one's here to exactly explain to me what problem we're solving, so. Rod?
I agree. I don't understand the exact problem that we're trying to solve. And what's been working in the past hasn't been a problem from what I can see. I think we're just adding another layer to the onion that is not really needed.
And if I remember, I think I asked Chief Meister the last time he was here and this was presented if he had ever been hampered from accepting a donation for any kind of reason like this, and I believe the answer was no. It's never been a hindrance, this policy, so. Really not sure where we want to go here, people. I know where I want to go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
don't wanna
guess
move forward.
the way I'm looking at it, it's basically asking for an exception on these specific types of events for not to have the 1,000, but to have a $2,000 limit.
Mhm.
I agree that if we're not having that come up often, is this a problem of filling the packet or paperwork shuffle? But to Reagan's point, we have the the policy is there for a reason, and I think it's good
One
that we
thing-
just stick to it and keep it simple.
The only thing I just thought of is it maybe has something to do with timing.
Mhm.
It does make it hard for them to accept a last minute donation of over 1,000. It's the only thing I could think of that would be a hindrance.
Yeah.
If I could
Can you
chime
speak to that?
I think that was an element, if I remember correctly. But as you're talking, I'm wondering if we do run into this, do we look at just increasing that threshold to $2,000 for, if that's truly a problem? And I don't know that it is.
Mhm.
This was born out of the chief and some of the department heads. So
Do we have this policy on our list of policies to review?
We kind of just went through the donation policy a couple of years ago, right?
right,
Director?
it's fairly new.
Right.
Yeah. But given this issue, maybe that it's ripe for another look at. When
Right, we could maybe have some information on how often
Mhm.
donations between 1,000 and 2,000 come in, and then change it at that point if it's necessary. So that way we have one policy, no exceptions.
Mhm.
I think there's kind of a loophole in the policy that you could avoid this with. It says if the donation is made subject to conditions or restrictions, then the matter shall be referred to the city council for the city council's possible approval. If there are no restrictions on the donation, there's no requirement for us to approve it.
Right.
So it's whether or not someone wants to give $1,001 specifically for a program or say, here, you do what you want with it. I know what you want to do with it, but I'm
Right.
not going to tell you what to do with it.
Mhm.
So.
That sums it up even more for me.
Yeah, I think we should just table this or kick it. I don't know. Maybe move it to the ad hoc policies meeting and review it if we want, but I don't see it moving forward here.
Yeah, I mean, we could possibly put it on the agenda for an ad hoc review, but at this point, I don't think it's got enough support to move forward. All right,
All right.
let's move on. Review of amended capital improvement plan policy. Do you want to introduce this, Patrick?
This was reviewed and forwarded by the Ad hoc Committee on Financial Policies, and defines what capital improvement program is, what capital improvements are for the city, and how the process for putting them in place. I think the Ad hoc Committee went through it fairly thoroughly, and the recommendation was to have formal approval through the council.
Any questions or comments on this agenda item?
Kim, was this finalized at our last meeting? This one we were done with, correct? I don't think there was any revisions needed, so I think we have
we were bringing it
consensus.
forward, yeah.
Kind of a point of clarification for a newbie. So
Go
we
ahead,
have-
Matt.
So we have a capital improvements plan. It's a long-term plan, and this is just making tweaks to the plan as we're going along, kind of as it's written here, that occasionally you're going to go in and kind of rework it. And that's basically what this is to come and make a change to it to carry forward. I guess I'm just not sure like what this is really. This is basically, there's changes to our CIP, and we're okaying this.
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the financial end of it, right, Kim? I mean, the financial policy that would address any capital improvement project that we undertake, or how you define it, I guess, or how it's reviewed before we undertake it. But this isn't necessarily the policy that says, here are all the roads we're going to fix for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
It's not that
Right.
plan, it's the financial policy. that
And
goes
we're
with
now
the plan.
amending it kind of as we've gone forward and moved through a couple of years. We're going to readdress going forward from there, basically. Okay.
Any objections to moving this forward?
Negative.
All right, we will move this forward to the next regular meeting. Thank you. All right, next is the city schools facility use agreement update. Patrick and Mayor Tome have had some meetings with school administration, and if you'd like to, Patrick, I'll let you kick this off.
Yeah. We've had this topic on the cow for a couple of meetings, and it's really tied to just looking at an agreement that's a couple of years old, dealing with a new administration at the schools and making sure, like the MEUW agreement we just talked about, just needs a review, looking at it. Mayor Tome and I talked about issues related to facility access and even expanding our opportunities to use facilities. The school district has started to utilize the pavilion from time to time, and on top of the football field, the baseball facilities. There may be a time where the city has a use for a classroom. The DOT has utilized the multipurpose room for meetings, so we want to memorialize those concepts in a revised agreement. We talked about who the point of contacts would be for both the city and the schools. But this was, a initial meeting to lay out those issues. I think, I can't speak for the mayor, but I think we walked away feeling pretty good about things. And the next step was that I had volunteered to incorporate some of the concepts we talked about at the meeting. We'd have Attorney Johnson review and try to update the agreement that would apply to the issues that we deal with now. So
I think Patrick hit the nail on the head as far as what I witnessed at the meeting as well. It's trying to, update an agreement that's probably 3 or 4 years old now, and it hasn't really been amended other than the use of this room for the school board meetings. That's the one amendment that we've included in the original agreement, but I think further defining specific facilities that we agree to share with the school and vice versa is beneficial. I think one of the other parts that needed updating was just the verbiage in the agreement about the communication between our rec director and the dean of students. There isn't one singular person on the school side that we rely on for the scheduling part of it. There's multiple people over there, so I think having the addition of those titles in the agreement will help as well. I think Annette raised a good point too, that there are certain facilities we could use at a school which maybe aren't related to athletic activities, such as like the DOT public information meetings we have at the middle school lunchroom. That would be more geared towards the principal, not the athletic director of the facility. So
the one other point that was raised, and while, I've had regular meetings with school administration on the agreement, as it says in the agreement, we thought that we would put a specific date for which an annual review would take place. And we talked about June. I believe Superintendent Duman wanted June because of her schedule, so.
Yep, that makes sense, and I always like a deadline. It tends to spur action on everybody's part, so.
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah. Sorry. Whose job is it in this makeup to make sure the priorities of who's first in line and second in line and third in line for the facilities. Whose job is that to make sure that that's a smooth process?
From which entity?
Both.
I think
Yeah.
that's what I just kind of tried to mention, is that we have one person on the city side, we have multiples on the other,
There's,
because there's 3 different schools. So you have different gyms and different, facilities that are run by the school. So I think naming those individual titles will help, that it's not just one person that's responsible on the school side, as we kind of have just Amy Jo on the rec side, so.
okay. Cool, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Sounds like at this point, Patrick, you're just kind of working on an amendment to the agreement that Paul will look at and you'll bring forward when you have it
Yes.
ready?
Yep. I think our thoughts are to have something in place before school comes back into session, so.
Okay. I'm pretty well involved with this one, and it's been on the agenda at my request a number of times here. I appreciate your efforts, Patrick and Mayor Tome, getting this going with the administration. It does come out of basically the agreement with CCO last year. And with all due respect to Mr. Osgood, I would disagree with your statements from earlier as far as your objection to CCO being termed a competitive league. It's a league that was established with talent evaluations that on its face is competitive. And as far as the city encroaching on your league, I would strongly disagree with that, as well as the rec department was existing with the EYSBL league for a number of years before we attempted a cooperative agreement last year that is not continuing. So I'm fine with us both going our separate ways, but I think as long as this is an amicable split, and we should just move on and move forward. Any other questions or comments? We're comfortable with moving this forward then? Great, that'll come to the next regular meeting. Thank you.
Well, actually, do you want to review the amendment at a committee of the whole before? I think we should do that.
Oh, yeah, you guys don't have it finalized yet? Yeah.
Right.
It'll come back to us then so we can see the,
My
to
understanding
see
is
the
when
agreement
I
in whole.
have a draft and reviewed by Attorney Johnson, and we'll bring it back to committee of the whole.
Great, thank you. All right, next is consider change to cable commission makeup and ordinance.
I can address this one. This kind of came out of the meeting that we had concerning the facilities use agreement. I believe there's some interest in the school board possibly wanting to have some involvement on the cable commission. That was a question that was brought to them with the last school administrator, and there wasn't interest at that time. I think the cable commission's kind of had some downtime or lack of membership the last couple years, and I feel that now that we've got a partnership with the school in this room where they're able to hold their meetings and televise them on cable, that having a seat at the table on the cable commission would further provide some potential opportunities in the future, maybe for students or creative opportunities, or some production of some things here. I mean, we do have 2 channels on cable. One is for the city, one is for the school. So I guess I've been striving to try to get more involvement from the school on that. But as the current ordinance reads, I don't believe we can appoint someone outside of the city of Columbus, and the person that they are looking to appoint does not reside in the city but in the school district. We do have another seat on the cable commission that is dedicated for the Water and Light Commission. I don't know if there's any restrictions on their residence or not, but I guess what I'm looking for is to try to tweak the ordinance to allow an appointee from the school, I guess, as long as they're within the school district.
Andy?
Yeah, as a member of the Cable Commission, I would fully support this. I mean, we've had some discussions. We had a discussion at our first meeting that I was a part of, and, we were, very favorable of getting someone from the school district. And, whether or not they live in town, to me, it doesn't matter, because they're invested in the school district, which is invested in our city. So I would support this change.
I guess I have a quick point before I get to you, Regan, if you don't mind. do we really need them to be a resident of the school district or just an employee of the school district for the school district to name them their designee?
Don't know that it needs to be an employee. I mean, this specific person who's interested is an employee, but I
Mhm.
don't know if you want to restrict that, or if there's someone else that they may have that isn't, employed by the school district and they live within the district. I feel like you have to have some border that they have a tie to the community.
Right, I guess I
geographically.
would consider it an employment board. I guess I would figure if someone's gonna represent the school district, they'd be an employee of the school district, and not just a citizen of the school district, which is how I kinda interpret that.
Well, I guess if the broader picture here is we're trying to expand the pool of people to serve on these committees, then having a representative of the district serves that purpose. But then limiting it to an employee shrinks it back up.
Mhm.
I mean, my question was going to be geared at how would you change the language by just, instead of having the remaining members, or instead of, you just add in paragraph B, in the second sentence, one of the members shall be an alderperson, one member shall be a member of the Water and Light Commission, and then add, and one member shall be a member of the school district. So you'd still have 5 members. You'd just have 2 would be citizens of the city, and the other 3 are designated.
You'll need it to be a little more precise than that, I think, because isn't your intent to have the school district appoint its own member?
That's what I was,
Okay.
So that'll be similar to how Water and Light does it. Water and Light appoints its own member, the school district will appoint its own member, the mayor will appoint a council member, and then if you still want to have 5 members, that will leave 2 at-large members, which you then can decide, do they need to be citizen residents, do they need to be school district residents, do they need to be none of the above?
Matt, we'll take you first.
I guess, kind of going off of that point, I agree. It's read in here for Water and Light, one member shall be a member of the Water and Light Commission. I wonder if we left it open to one person shall be a member of shall be appointed by the school itself, and then leaves it open to either somebody in the school district or that person could also be an employee. You can kind of draw from both. You figure if they're working for the school, they have involvement in the school. They might live in Sun Prairie, but they're part of that school. And if they're from the school district, they're part of the school district, and they're part of either way. And I think that any of these appointments didn't come before us to vote on anyways. If we aren't happy with somebody being appointed based on their location, that could be addressed, but at least opens it up to kind of a pool. And in my mind, if you're living in the school district or not living there but working there, you're still part of the school.
Mm-hmm.
And that might leave it open enough to allow somebody to come in and then vet it appropriately in front of us.
I don't know, Matt, what you said there, though. The Water and Light Commission member that's appointed is not appointed by us or confirmed by us. They're appointed by the commission. So
Yeah.
if you have the language, the school could appoint anybody that they wanted. It doesn't come for review here. So
If
we
we go
wouldn't,
to-
yeah.
And that comment
We can't
does-
reject it.
does
Okay.
a distinction as well, because that is a member of the Water and Light Commission that serves on the Cable Commission. So if you wanted to narrow this up more, you could say it has to be a member of the school board that serves on the Cable Commission. I don't know if that's your intent or not, but that's how it reads for the Water and Light Commission. It's not somebody appointed by them, it's one of its members.
Or a designee. I mean, because
It's one of its members right now.
yeah, because I,
It can be a designee, but it's one of its members right now.
Which would knock out Chet and narrow it back down to kind of going against the point of what we're trying to do to get more people.
So if you're trying to expand, then we can certainly expand. It just depends on what barriers you want to put on there.
What are the bylaws or restrictions, requirements for Water and Light? Do they have to be a resident of the city?
doesn't specify.
Doesn't specify at all.
There are no rules in this ordinance for that.
So Water and Light could bring somebody in from,
Well, right now it says it has to be a member of the Water and Light Commission.
yeah, I'm saying for somebody to be appointed to the Water and Light Commission, separate from us.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have a requirement that a person who's on the Water and Light Commission, separate from us,
Yes.
needs to be within the service area? Okay. Which service area sounds a lot like school district to
That's
me.
right.
with a second and a third.
Can we take Andy first?
No, go ahead.
You sure?
Well, mine, okay, sure, fine.
You've been waiting patiently, Andy.
We're-
Just trying to give you your
I mean, we keep
piece of
bringing,
the
we keep
floor.
talking about the Water and Light Commission. Can just someone give me some background on why they have a place on the Cable Commission?
I can.
Thank you. I just, no, full history would be helpful.
And Ann will correct me, but it's got something to do with the cable using the utility poles. So, yeah.
Okay. Cleared that up, thank you.
And I kind of feel like if the school has a channel, that we
Yeah.
should have someone from the school on the commission.
Agreed.
Trina.
Oh, I was just interested in keeping it really, really simple and just saying one school district representative, keeping it super open for us to then approve or disapprove.
I'm wondering, on the library board, there's a school district, or maybe it's the superintendent or designee. Could that language apply? Could we just say the superintendent or designee?
That's kind of what I'm leaning towards too.
I like that.
The school can
It
designate
does
who they
sound
wish.
good.
I guess my only point with bringing up the employment thing wasn't to limit it to employees. It was more about opening up to folks who might be employed by the district but live outside the city limits and outside the school district, therefore further keeping it as wide open as possible. So let's say Chet's employed here but lives up in Beaver Dam. Chet would still be A-okay.
And
But
designee
as simple as we can get it, to Mike's point, as far as like we need to have flexibility for the school district to choose a designee.
You know, all you have to do is say one member appointed by the school board.
I like it.
Done.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's, Paul brought it up earlier, as far, are
Thank
we
you.
replacing one at-large member with the school board appointee? And I would rather add the seat if we can, so instead of 5, we have 6, so we still have the 2 at-large members. Can we do that?
You sure can. Well, then you have a total of,
3.
you'll have a total of 3 at-large members then.
We have 3 right now? Let's
You
see.
have 5 total
5.
right now.
You have 5 total right now, so there's one alderman, there's 1 water and light commission member, and there's 3 at-large.
Yeah, I want to keep it 3 at-large.
You can have as many people as you like, but just remember what happens with even numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Tie votes.
That's the only downside.
Then we can add a clause in there for some sort of arm wrestling tiebreaker, coin flipping thing.
No, ties are defeats. So, okay, so 1 member appointed by the mayor from the other persons, 1 member appointed by the Water and Light Commission, 1 member appointed by the school board, 3 at-large members appointed by the mayor subject to city council confirmation. The 3 at-large members will continue to serve their rotating terms, so we won't be changing that. The Water and Light Commission member is annual. The alderperson is an annual, and the school board should be an annual.
I would agree with that.
I'll give it a shot.
Right.
If we run into a problem where every vote is a tie, we can address that later, but I
I doubt that will
don't
be
know.
the case.
Great. Thank you for your help, Attorney Johnson.
I'll have
All
this
right.
for the next committee of the whole.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Next item is
I hope so.
review of alcohol license review process.
Good job.
A review of the review process.
I guess I can start this off. I met with Patrick, Chief Meister, to discuss this a little bit, and I guess after watching the last council meeting when I was excused, I couldn't help but feel there's some things that could possibly be improved in the process, and started looking at the ordinances, et cetera. An alcohol license review process, I guess, is probably more appropriate than review board, which was my first instinct. I don't think that we want to create another board that we have to recruit 5 or 6 people to serve on, but I think looking at the ordinance and maybe doing a little housekeeping and some improvement would do us some justice in the future. I think most of the things we discussed in here were outlined fairly well. I have been looking at Chapter 6 a little bit, and I feel like there's just some archaic language that could maybe be cleaned up, and that we could spell out the annual renewal process a little bit better. I think that Patrick and Dan and I both agreed at least getting the basic information to the council one meeting earlier at the end of May to kind of start it there. We may not have all the information at that time, but I think if we start that process there, it gives us a full 30 days moving forward for any notifications that need to go out to current license holders for any issues that they need to clean up before the deadline. So it gives them a little bit more time to work on those things. I think that was one of the main things that I had seen in there. And also, I think one of the restrictions in there is that you can't get a license if you're for a dwelling, which makes sense that you can't have a tavern in a house. And I'm assuming there are probably some reasons that go along with that, but can we further define what the expectations are on a premises?
There's, in the zoning code, there are restrictions on
Where you can have
where
those
you can
licenses?
have it, and it's just basically not in residential structures.
Okay. So I guess I wanted to open up the conversation here after, you guys just went through this at the last meeting to see if there's some ideas you may have to kind of contribute to patching some holes and making this a little bit easier to do in the future.
I have a question. When we're saying here, talking about an extra meeting, are you simply talking about bringing it to council one meeting before we did this year, or an extra meeting specifically designated
Well,
to go over the applicants?
kind of both. I think starting it 2 weeks earlier, we'll get the information out there, and it'll give a little bit more time to kind of
Yep.
inform the license holders. But since we have a committee of the whole, we don't have an alcohol license review meeting, so we are that board. So I think if we wanted to list something in the ordinance to kind of spur that review process, that we are the de facto alcohol license review board, so we don't forget it, or if maybe it's a semi-annual review. When I talked to the chief about it, it's just about marking the progress from all the different agencies that do inspections, or if Dan sees some issues that are reoccurring, it's good to kind of know them. Otherwise, you're waiting a year, and then all of a sudden you're getting flooded with information from maybe one or more establishments that are having issues. But that also doesn't capture the need for approving licenses all year long. So I think it's just understanding that we are the alcohol license review board on the committee of the whole, and that we maybe just kind of establish a process and say, this is what we feel like we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my 2 cents is, whether it be annually or biannually, I like the idea of having a standalone, I can't believe I'm saying that, a standalone meeting just on this issue as it comes up, because there was a lot of information and that's a lot of moving pieces. So, yeah, move the deadline to get it to us up, but also, I think between the time we're first seeing it and when we need to take action as a council, there could be this, a special edition of the
Session.
committee of the whole to review the packet.
What's the application deadline?
Well, if they're going to be if they're going to apply for a new license, and there is one available, like the Class A we just talked about, it's any time you want.
Okay.
The Class B, the ones, you can come in anytime.
What about for renewal
But the annual
specifically?
review, it doesn't start until after April 15th, because we have to deal statutorily. Anybody who comes in with a license application before April 15th, we have to deal with before June 30th. Anything after that, then we deal with for the June 30th renewal and the July 1st new license. It's, they all have the opportunity to renew. They may choose to renew or not. none of the ones that had issues were surprised by the issues. These are things that they were fully aware of before it came around time to renew their license. They knew if they were delinquent with their utility bills. They knew if they were delinquent with their alcohol vendor bills. They knew if they were having visits from the fire inspector or the building
Right.
inspector.
I guess my point is if we went in this direction, we're not gonna mess with the application
The
deadline to
application
you.
process, we have to process them in a timely manner according to the statutes. And the renewal process, they have to get the stuff into us sometime between April 15th and when we can get it published in the paper, at the committee of whole, and then to the regular council meeting, so that by July 1st, when their new license period starts, the license have been granted.
Mhm.
Some of them, we've had many times over the years where they have been granted but not issued until they resolved their issues. It doesn't always happen, but at that time of year is the only time of the year that we can go in and say, okay, you gotta catch up on all these things that you owe. And statutorily, that's when the liquor vendors can step in and say, they owe us money. You can grant them a license. We're not asking you to go through the process to revoke or suspend. We just don't want you to give it to them until they catch up with their bills. Because the state law allows them to do that.
And I'd like to piggyback on what Ann was just saying, is that once you issue a license originally, the license holder then has a vested interest in the license. So it is not a situation where when the second meeting of June comes around and you decide, we probably shouldn't give Joe a Class B license anymore because we decided he's not running a place we like. That's not how it works. Once the license is issued, it can only be taken away after you do a formal action to either non-renew or to suspend or to revoke for a specific period of time. So it's not at the whim of the council to just decide that we're not going to grant the license. They have due process rights, they are entitled to a hearing, they're entitled to basically the equivalent of a trial before the license can be taken away. So you're limited in that regard. And also, we had a brief conversation on this point at the last meeting, is that for new licenses that come before you, it will be very important for you to identify what the premises actually is. Because just about every one of the licenses that's issued in the city right now basically says, yeah, anywhere on the property is fine. And that's not how it is intended to be done, but that is how it's commonly done, just because it's easy. And fortunately, I don't think we have any problems along that line yet, but that's something that should stick in the back of your head. And the last point that I want to make, and I'm hesitant to make this point, but I'm going to do it anyway, is if you're concerned about people like, well, I'll use Heather Caldwell as an example just because she was here tonight, but if you're concerned about bad acts or bad operators or things of that nature, once upon a time, the city did have a demerit point ordinance. It was very short-lived. It was highly controversial, but it was there. And it was there as a tool that basically got off on the wrong foot and went downhill quickly after that. But that's just another tool that you do have. I'm reluctant to even bring it up, but it did. So,
You're a brave man.
well, I brought it up. I was looking down the line and I wasn't sure who was here when that actually existed. So,
Michael was.
and maybe Rod might have been.
Yeah, I was here.
Yeah, okay. So I brought it up. It can die
I
a peaceful
appreciate
death
the
if you like,
information.
but I just thought I'd at least do my job and bring it up again.
Yeah.
And without my 2 cents worth, without the demerit point system, there really isn't any reason to have a more than annual meeting of the Alcohol Review Committee, because you don't have any ground to do anything unless there's
Right.
several convictions and you are determined as a group to go through the revocation or suspension process, which would come at the recommendation of the police chief for violations, and unless you're prepared to go.
I think one good thing that came up this year was the fact that we read each one individually into the record. And per council's advice, we took that. That makes sense. So I think that's the path forward we're trying to take. We're not trying to, at least I don't interpret our aim here as trying to figure out how we're going to, what's the process for revoking licenses, and can we kind of set that game up ahead of time for ourselves. I don't see that as our intent, but maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was mainly about following the city statute as it's written and reading each one into the record so that it's full, complete, and clear. And so now just looking at the overall review process in that light. Does that comport with everybody else's thoughts and feelings on that one? And I just feel like kind of taking me down a road I don't think we're trying to go as far as revocations and the like, so I'm not sure the point on that.
I think one easy change is, I can honestly say I've never seen one of these applications in 4 years. This describes the premises. To me, that's a big deal right now, is that once someone is able to expand their premises, and I don't know that when I'm doing a renewal, that's a big deal. I know you guys kind of had a little checklist last time for this inspection or that inspection, and I feel like this one right here is something significant, is that if you're unaware that the premises has, or the description of the premises has changed from year 1 to year 2 or year 3, I feel like that's something that the council has to be aware of when the application comes through, especially the first time. I think that's a pretty simple change, is that when we have the new licenses, that we actually see the application, so we know that.
And would you take that further and saying that you'd have to define the premises right there on the initial application? I think that's your point, correct, Attorney Johnson? So that we don't have
Right,
it.
There's not a whole lot of room.
The initial application tells you to define the premises, and and it's intended that you identify what rooms are you gonna be serving alcohol in, what rooms are you gonna be storing alcohol in, what rooms are you gonna be selling alcohol in. And basically, that's the premises, and everything else is not. And unfortunately, what normally happens is that, for a variety of reasons, is that people come in and they fill out the application, and they say, all buildings, all areas on the property. Okay, so that means that now it's perfectly legal to go out and basically create a beer garden without any oversight, without any check by the city, because you've already allowed alcohol to be served and consumed on the sidewalk,
Well, there's
in the
only-
parking lot.
There's only
or-
one place in the city that doesn't have a fenced area required, and that's Badger. Everybody else has the fenced area here or the fenced area there.
Right now, and you can try to regulate through the back door.
And the country club.
Some of those things by doing other kinds of ordinances, but you gotta be careful when you do that.
I think when we went through the process, once we kind of got our legs on everything kind of going, it seemed like the matrix with which ones had access worked out really well. It was very clear, and we didn't, I think myself, fire off the chief and building inspection. I think we kind of have that process where we see them all listed out, and it's real clear that which ones are good to go, and we can keep going along. And then the ones that do have issues, there's a supporting thing where it says, missing a C.O.W. bill, missing a whatever. And then I think adding a line to a box on the end clarifying if there has been a change from the previous license, indicating a change in any and all buildings above and below, beside, underneath, that whole process probably would help to clarify any changes to the actual application from year to year itself. And I thought that the matrix was very helpful once we actually got going, and that's, I think, kind of what we're looking at for going forward.
I agree. I liked it as well, and I like Mike's point about applications actually coming as part of the review process, and then maybe, just an extra set of eyeballs from each of us, and we can make sure the premises is that we're voting to okay is really okay with all of us, because it's just going to be renewed almost in perpetuity if we don't catch it early.
Chapter 6, Section 6-40, Safety and Sanitation Requirements, is where it talks about the various inspections. I think that the ordinance is probably it makes perfect sense. I just don't know that we've been going through the process of review, I guess. The one thing I did note in here is that it says the city clerk shall notify the City of Columbus Police Department, the chief of the fire department that has jurisdiction over the city, and the city building inspector of the license application. These investigating officials shall inspect the premises for which the license is being requested and shall submit written reports and recommendations to the council prior to the city council's review of the application. And I feel like that's kind of what you guys were getting at on the matrix, and so that's there.
And they have been doing that, and I have been reporting that to you each year, that they have no issues or they have issues, and here they are. This just happened to be a bumper crop year.
Yeah. The one thing that I will note in here, it says, by submitting an application for a license pursuant to this chapter, the applicant is consenting to the police department, fire department, and building inspector conducting an inspection of the premises for which the license is requested. I think at the last meeting, I heard you say maybe that if there's no building permit that was pulled for that property, that there would be no inspection.
No, if there's an issue, if the fire inspector says that there's an issue, the building inspector will go. That's why the building inspector went,
Okay,
because the fire inspector said there's an issue.
okay.
So they work with each other too, and go back and forth. Some of them are harder, I mean, because it's a business, and it's highly regulated, so it has to be very substantial before you can pull anything out from under them once they have their business going and their license issued.
And yeah, and that's why I feel like the first time through with approval, when you're dealing with a premises that maybe wasn't a tavern or a bar restaurant for years, as many of the establishments downtown have been, they've changed hands. They've gone through inspections and they kind of are, working to comply. But if you take an old casket factory that's never been a licensed premises, that's where I think you run into issues that you have to address when you're issuing a license. Because I think Paul hit the nail on the head. You can't pull back after the license is issued once. You can't take it away.
Andy?
So, if I'm hearing this correctly, so like, for example, tonight we moved forward with the painted crate, but we didn't see an application. You would want to see that application that defined that premises as well in the process?
I think that it's a brand new license. I just think seeing the application, if there's anything that rings a bell, we've seen it. If there's inspections that are done by the 3 agencies listed in the ordinance, then they give a recommendation to the council to say, yep, I found something, or no, everything's fine. But I think the terminology review of application by the city council is in the ordinance, and I think just having the application, especially when they're new, is very important.
So something we should have next meeting for that when we move forward tonight?
We already approved that one tonight, didn't we? Or
Oh.
no, that was on the committee of the whole, correct?
Wasn't it?
No, I think that was so.
Committee of the whole.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thought so. Okay. Just, I was just thinking out loud.
Good idea.
Yeah.
As far as public what's public record and what's not.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
So we might have to revise the application into 2 pages.
We can add extra ones to it, or extra pages to it, but we have to use that for
Oh.
Okay.
state regulated.
But you are allowed to add to
We
it?
can add stuff.
Okay.
We have a couple of extra sheets we can make them give us.
Okay.
This just,
It requires us to get a copy of their restaurant license, their seller's permit, their, they have to use this form, they have to use the auxiliary form, they have to use the appointment meeting form, and then we just add them.
So where it defines premises, and can we just, in our own ordinance, make them have that as an attachment?
Well, we make them, give us a drawing, like you
Oh,
make
okay.
Shopco and all those guys show us where in their building they're gonna have it, if they're gonna say something other than it's in the whole place, because, they have to say where they keep the records, and if you look at, if you go into a bar this next week, and go look
Or
at
maybe
their
later
license,
tonight.
and you'll see says on it that where the records are, where it's consumed, where it's stored, where it's sold. And then when the state comes in and does an inspection, they go to that license and they say, well, it says here you've got your records upstairs, so I need to go upstairs. You have to show me everywhere that is listed on here where you store, sell, or consume the product. So we make sure we write it all out. And the Painted Crate has a fenced-in area near the back of their building, and they have their samples they want to have, be able to, if it's nice weather, have outdoors when they have like a wine vendor come in and do their, show their stuff. And so they have a little drawing of where it's going to be fenced in. Different places like La Tolteca has that fenced-in courtyard. And MP TAP has that area in the back that they fence off once a year. That, and they call and say, we're gonna fence it off and have a fundraiser for something.
So do they usually just submit like a simple, like hand-drawn site map to you?
Well, if they're new, they do. The country
Okay.
club says that, that they're selling it as they, on the carts, driving through the country.
Makes sense, yeah.
Here's another one that has a fenced-in area. Black Kettle.
Yeah.
Is that fenced-in area in the back. Bowling alley used to have a fenced-in area to the side, and they amended their license at one time to put up and take down the fenced-in area off their rear door when they had large weddings and things like that. So we've had different things like that come and go. If they want to have it outside of their building, they have to say where it's going to be and how they're going to contain it. That's why you see on picnic licenses too, they have to say how they're going to contain it. You can't just roam randomly through the streets of the city having fun unsupervised.
Except for the 4th of July.
It's not allowed.
Is there anything on the application that outlines that they're agreeing to those inspections by those 3 entities, or is there a requirement?
Not on the application, that's a city ordinance as
Okay.
opposed to a state law.
Okay.
And by state law, fire department must inspect every commercial operation twice a year in the fire district. And they're a commercial operation. All of these would be commercial operations.
All right, so what are we looking for here? Bring this back and
Why don't we just
Keep-
table it and bring it back to the next committee of the whole?
Keep
But
working on
I
it.
do think maybe if we're going to approve that license, just to kind of start a precedent, as Andy pointed out, is just finding a way to review the application since it's brand new before the next, at the next meeting.
Can it be done in closed session to address the privacy issues on the application? No.
Well, if you just stick to the actual license, there's nothing,
It
Right.
just couldn't
The
be.
actual license itself
There's
has
nothing.
no information on it that's not public, confidential, or that is confidential.
This
sorry.
application?
Right.
Okay. And it could be given to us at the meeting, I suppose? as
Yeah, well,
opposed
yeah,
to
it's a
not put in
public,
the
that's a
packet.
public record.
Okay, all right.
so we will bring this back.
To the committee of the whole, can we just kind of
Yeah.
keep this memo as a placeholder then, so?
All right. Moving on then, item number 13, 2018 city budget process. I requested this to be on the agenda. I've been on here for 2 budget cycles now. We did it a little differently my first year as opposed to my second year. Seemed like we had some different ideas come up last year, so I know county's reviewing budgets. I know staff is working budgets right now, so I figured might as well get it up on the calendar now and start thinking about timeline and process. I guess I started my request with Patrick, talking about how last year I felt like I would have preferred to shorten the length of the meetings and increase the number of meetings, as horrible as that sounds. Especially given that time of year when we have a lot anyway. I just felt last year when we were combining a lot of departments at once, these meetings were getting pretty long in duration, and in order for us to all give us our best, analysis and critique, I would like to see it broken up a little bit more in line with the way we did it my first year. But like I said, I think everybody should kind of weigh in on this and see what people are comfortable with, what people's desires are as far as the process goes, and the timeline of it all. Andy?
Actually, only doing one budget last year, I found it to be a little overwhelming sometime when you get into the third hour and you're looking, you're not as sharp as maybe you should be. So I would be definitely open to doing shorter, more frequent meetings, maybe one department at a time or two departments, something like that. So I like this idea.
Rod?
I'll agree with Andy. We're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed the first couple hours, but after looking at numbers for 3 hours and 4 hours straight, things kind of get muddled. And, so shorter would be better, even though it would mean a couple more meetings.
I think Regan.
Yeah, and I can't remember this last year or when we went through this the last cycle. Did we suspend the ad hoc meetings during that process? So I guess I'm just, we
Yeah,
were able to
pretty
use
much.
that time instead to get some of this accomplished. So having an eye towards if we're going to focus on the budget, try to also put aside other things that we maybe don't need to tackle right away. Another thought I had was some of it could be maybe done in the committee of the whole, some of the departments. We didn't have a lot of questions. It was more informational. I don't know if that, as we lead into the season, getting some of those taken care of that way.
I guess my feeling on that point would be I see them as kind of like budget workshops, which I prefer to do outside of the committee of the whole work. I like the idea of more efficient use of our time, of course, but being that they are such mutable documents at that point that we can just kind of keep them in a workshop environment. I guess the other thing I would like to see on the calendar, get them moved up as far as when we start discussing these with staff on a department by department basis. It might also provide us an opportunity to separate issues of budget dollars versus what are we going to borrow for and things like that, and then we could tackle those issues on separate nights altogether and not get this kind of all muddled up in our
Yes.
in my own small little brain.
No, it's not you. It's me too. I agree.
Trina?
Oh, I think I may be the only one that actually prefers the longer meetings.
I think you are.
Thanks for your input. It's all
Well,
candy.
let me
right?
clarify. I don't want like 5 shorter meetings all in 1 week either. I mean, yeah.
And that's where I would guess I'd like to see if we could start this like next month sometime. That would give us a chance to spread these out and not have to do like 5 in a week. If we could do two departments 1 week, 2 departments the next week, something like that, and then have a couple breakout sessions specifically about borrowing and where we're at in that whole grand scheme, would be a rough outline of a process, I guess. Matt, how did you like last year?
No comment. Yeah, I figure you guys would know a lot better on this, and I don't know. I mean, I do estimates all day, so I'm excited to sit in long meetings and look at numbers and eat candy. So I you don't want my opinion on it.
Reagan, I think you hit on probably one issue that I've been kind of discussing since I've been here, is that separating and having more clarity between the budget process of levying tax dollars and separating that from borrowing or capital projects, I guess, makes it a little bit more clear. I think when you're kind of jogging those numbers around for the final figure, it can get a little bit confusing, where you're using up unused bond proceeds or something like that to kind of do something else. And I think that can get kind of confusing. You know, it takes a long time, and I'm no expert at this by any means. Going through 4 budgets, it doesn't get easier. There's always something new to deal with. And also the sewer budget. I think there was maybe one of the first couple years I was in, we were presented the sewer budget and essentially, you know, approved it at the next meeting. That in itself is a large budget, and I think keeping those things all separated makes it a little bit easier to understand what you're doing in the budget process. And it's, you know, coming down to a levy, essentially. Where can you go? For the most part, I'd say the budget doesn't change that much from year to year. So I think starting the process earlier, you can kind of assume, okay, here's the budget we had last year. Here are the differences that we're going to expect this year. We don't have to do this, you know. I think starting it early would be a good idea just for some basics, but keeping those 3 things, the capital improvements, if there's a plan, just kind of have it as a separate conversation or a separate component of the budget, and then also the sewer utility budget, just kind of keeping those 3 separate. Makes it a little bit easier to understand.
Patrick, what are your guys' feelings as far as timeline and when you'd be ready? Because obviously you guys are already kind of on a course for this year, so I don't want to throw too big of a monkey wrench into your process, but obviously we have our reasons for wanting to move it up.
For the past several weeks in department head meetings, I've had just basically reminders to the department heads to start thinking about their budgets, start to formulate their plans. Every year I send out essentially a kickoff memo to department heads just to kind of outline, summarize the parameters, kind of some of the things we're looking at, but also ask them to return their proposed budgets to myself and Kim within a set time frame, and then we spend time sitting down with each department head to go over those before we get to the part where we're going to do workshops. I think we're at a point where we can look at beginning those workshops in mid to late August. If I recall correctly, the 2 years ago when we did the more meetings and the shorter ones, we did get going in August then. So I think that's not something that is going to be a problem. So
Okay, good deal. Yeah, I just didn't want to throw you guys too big a curveball, and it's nothing you guys want to rush, that's for sure. But
yeah, I'm glad we're having this conversation so we get just a feel as we go in and put together a plan.
Okay.
So
Thank you. So I don't know really what we're going to do more than bring this back for the next meeting and kind of see if we can start setting up a schedule.
I could put together a schedule by then. Sure.
And then look at it at the next committee of the whole on the, what is that going to be, the 18th? Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much, Patrick.
Yep.
All right. James Street reconstruction.
Yep. As we've been following every meeting, here's the report on the project. Thank you to Mayor Tome, Alders, Malott, and Trexler to work together on the James Street amenities, the trees and whatnot. So I'll work with you on a schedule for that. The stage 1 section of the project is now open to traffic. Our Randy Keene had a great idea to open that up immediately after the parade. His people did that. Now they're fully functional up over there, and I think that alleviates a lot of issues. But with the second stages, that brings up different issues. So the crews are working now on stage 2. A lot of work here in the 100 block and 200 block area of West James. And I was told that they were going to be focusing also on the lift station area. That's further west near Hughes and American Packaging. Also, at the next council meeting, we've invited, and invitation was accepted by the DOT representatives. They're going to give an overview of the project, talk a little bit about the terrace issues on East James. So they've agreed to come and talk about that. I think it's a good point actually in the progress of the project too, just to talk about where they're at, what they're seeing, and what do they expect from here on out. So they'll be here on the 18th. That's all I have.
All right. Andy?
I don't know if you know this or not, but do you know what the new stoplight downtown, is that going to be, like the timing of it, is that going to be the actual timing of the light? 'Cause I noticed it's changed pretty significantly.
I don't know that. My sense, and then this is my very unqualified unengineer, as a non-engineer, I think it's set to deal with the 3 spokes, so to speak. But it's something I'd have to check on, why it is the way it is and what it would be set at once everything's fully functional at that intersection.
Are there sensors there, or is it, do we know?
I believe it's on a timer, so they program how that's going to work.
Okay. That's all.
Someone might have pushed the button on the crosswalk.
That also does affect it, yes.
That's true.
All right, well, that'll be good to see the folks from DOT next time. So I agree with you, Patrick. That's a really good point in the process here to kind of get a recap and a look forward at the same time. Mike?
Who is coming from the DOT, just for clarification?
Well, the 2 people in the field, Bob Lemke and Megan Shearer, and the project manager, Dave Pallon. Dave's been with us since the design, so he's very, very well versed and knowledgeable about this project.
Okay. One more question too. Now that we're almost done with phase 1, I think we're waiting on lights and a few other things. Does the state generally wait until the entire corridor is done before there's any punch lists, or do they kind of start punch listing the beginning of the project, when it's close to completion? Do you know how they do that?
I think I was not at this last weekly meeting. I guess it was short because of the holiday, but the one I was at prior, Michael's foreman was talking about asking for some substantial completion of stage 1. So that tells me that they'll need to do some reviews and make sure that stuff is taken care of before they would grant that. So
Okay. Thanks.
Anything further on that topic? All right, at this point, we are looking ahead at 2 different closed session items with nothing to come after that on the agenda. So at this point, I think once we move into closed session, we will be off the air for the remainder of the evening. Is that correct? All right. So item 15 on the agenda is convene to closed session per state statute 19.85 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require, specifically to discuss the developer's agreement with Drexel Building Supply for potential development in TIF number 4. Need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
And on that, we need a roll call, correct?
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Kenny,
Aye.
Malat, Reed,
Aye.
Rule,
Aye.
Tome,
Aye.
Traxler,
Aye.
unanimous.
Thank you very much.